Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're just going to waste a couple of moments as the room fills. We've got about 130 people who have registered for today's webinar on building a high-performance lettings team. Delighted to be joined again by John Paul, and we'll come to him and his experience in a moment. So for those of you who haven't previously been on one of our webinar series, you are in mute mode by default, and that's so that the other audience members don't get interrupted by background sounds, but we would love to hear from you. So on the right hand side of your screen there should be a console that looks a little like the one on the slide, and we'd love to have your questions, thoughts and feedback as we go through this. And so today we are talking about building a high performance lettings team. It's really interesting. So Zig Ziglar said, you don't build the business, you build the people, and the people build the business. And today we're looking at what I find the most interesting piece of growing and building a business, which is how do you recruit, train and retain great people. And I'm delighted that we're joined today by John Paul. As usual, today it is not legal advice and shouldn't be construed as such. Not that I think anything that we go through might even be construed as legal advice, or at least hopefully it won't be. It is for general information purposes. And today we are joined by Mr. John Paul, founder and CEO of Castle Dean. John, would you like to give a brief intro to the audience?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name's John Paul. I've got a 10-branch estate agency and letting agency in the north of England. We manage a couple of thousand houses. We sell about 700 properties a year, 52, 53 staff. And the best thing is I don't get involved in the running of my business whatsoever. So I've been kindly asked by Raj to come on here and just, explain how we've done it. I'm very big on systems, but I'm even bigger and a huge advocate of having the right people surrounding you. So hopefully, we can answer some of your questions today.
Amazing. Thank you again for joining us and sharing your insights with everyone. So we're going to go through the life cycle as I see it in terms of recruiting, training, and perhaps even parting ways with a team member. So we're going to start right at the top. And I know you've got your own terminology around this, but how do you recruit rock stars or worker bees?
Good question. So the first thing is do you actually need to recruit? So are you systemized? Are you efficient? Are you effective? Because a lot of businesses actually look at what they perceive to be a recruitment issue or a hole in their business, but in actual fact, you can fill in that hole, if you like, by just being more efficient, more effective, just working better, working smarter, not necessarily working hard. So once you've identified the fact that you do need to recruit, you need to have things in place, because it doesn't matter who you're going to recruit. If you don't have these things in place, it's pretty much destined to fail. And that is things such as your systems, your procedures, a robust training and development plan, leadership, management, you name it, that type of HR employability type processes in place. Because I could go work for someone, you could go work for somebody, and there's no structure in the business. The opposite of structure is chaos. So it's all well and good saying I've got to recruit the best talent, but are you giving them the very best opportunity to be a success? So have that in place, and we'll just take it as read that all the people watching have got that in place. Then you've got to try and cast your net out as wide and as far as you can to recruit the best talent. And one of the things we do is we don't recruit solely based on capability and competency. So we look at the CV, yeah, that's great, that's fantastic, not a problem. They've got 20 years working for a corporate, but that will not mean anything for us if when the going gets tough, or we ask them to do something that's out of their comfort zone. So we recruit primarily on values of the person. So one of those things that I said that you must have in place prior to recruitment is you must be crystal clear about your company's values, crystal clear about your mission statement, crystal clear about your customer service charter. So how do you want to be remembered? What are the values of your business? And what is your mission statement? Where are you wanting to take the business to? Because if you recruit somebody and you don't know what your values are, and you don't know what the ultimate goal is, then how can you expect them to have the same values and obviously their work taking you in the position, in the direction you want to go? So be crystal clear on your values. Ours are be better. All they are, we just want them to be better. So we were talking about this before we went live, marginal gains, incremental improvements, just every day, just get better, just get 0.5% better, 1% better, because in between 100 and 200 days, you're going to be twice as good as what you were today. So we recruit on values first. If they are capable and if they are competent, that is a bonus. But one thing it's non-negotiable, we do not compromise on, is the values of the individual. And it's quite tough when you're in the interview process to try and extract those values, but there's certain like tips and techniques. Tell, explain, describe, TED. So it's police interrogators use this technique. My brother-in-law is a copper, so he told me. And obviously when you research it, but it's like, tell me a situation when, explain to me, describe. And the reason we do this is because if you used closed questions, do you have these values? Did you do this? Do you think this? What do you? It's very difficult. It's people just answer yes, no, maybe, I don't know. But when you're asking for examples, situations, descriptions, the human brain can't lie effectively. So we always ask for examples or descriptions of and try and drag out that person's values.
And I guess sort of going right back to the top, so you talked about the sorts of people and hiring on values. I went to a talk, and this is a slight tangent, but by Glyn Trott, who's the managing director of Let MC, and it's what he said stuck with me, and we've implemented in our business, which is attitude, drive, coachability. So they're the three things we really look for, and the rest can be learned as you go, as long as someone ticks those. But how do you, when you're recruiting for your branches, where do you recruit from? How do you identify appropriate candidates? Are they people who you know from the market? Do you use external recruiters, or is it a combination approach?
So it's a combination. Again, when I said cast your net out wide, I mean, you know, look at the job sites, Indeed, Monster Jobs, CV Library. We do use recruiters. Some are better than others, and some are just terrible. Social media, we offer an incentive to current staff. So if they bring somebody on board, you know, they'll get a financial reward for that. So we do use a multitude of ways to try and attract that talent. Now, the interview process is literally the first part of it. Anyone can interview very well. So we have a second interview, and depending on the role or the hierarchy, we might even have a third interview. We then might give them half a day or a full day's worth of work paid. And we just want to make sure that they are the right person. So you mentioned worker bees and rock stars. So we separate our staff, and we just call them, people might call them the A or B players, the gold or silver players. We just call them worker bees and rock stars. Now, they're all good. Worker bees will turn up from 9 till 5 and will work their butts off, but that's all they'll work. Rock stars go that little bit further. Now, it's very difficult to have a balance. We always have around about 20% of rock stars and 80% of worker bees. Now, everybody will say, well, do you not want worker bees? Do you not want 100% worker bees? But the truth is, no, we don't. We don't want everybody rock stars to us are people trying to get to the top. Rock stars are the people that are working late, coming in early, working weekends, doing what it takes within our values, within our mission statement and our core competencies and capabilities in the training to get where they want to be. Now, if we've got 100 people, or 50, in this case, 50 people, all striving to be a manager and going for 10 spots, then 40 odd people are going to be disappointed and they'll eventually leave. So we're very happy with solid worker bees, 9 to 5ers. And we've got dozens and dozens, 30, 35, 40 of them. It's the rock stars who drive the business forward, supported by the worker bees.
And I appreciate we've got quite a lot to cover today. I'd just like to understand, through the interview process, how do you use scorecards, if at all? So how do you, first of all, set your scorecards, and then do you do anything about learning from the scorecards after someone's in the role to refine it? How do you approach that part of recruitment?
Good question, actually. So everything to do with the interview process is structured, you'll have guessed. So all the questions are set out, or the measuring system is set out, the scorecard is set out. We try and interview people around about the same time, because it's been proven the further on in the day you get, you can't be bothered. So you actually just say, yeah, whatever, and you give a low score. So if you ever get pulled over by the police and you actually got to go by, see a judge at 4 o'clock, you're probably going to get sent down, as opposed to if you saw them at 9 o'clock in the morning. True story, by the way. So we always try and do morning interviews, because then we're more awake, more fresh, we're interested, we're engaged, we can ask the questions. So rather than getting, say, for example, 8 done on a Monday, we'll do 4 on a Monday morning and 4 on a Tuesday morning. Everything has to be comparable. Everything. The questions, the scoring, the time, the environment, how you're feeling, everything. And then once we do that, we'll take it away, we'll learn from it, we might invite the top 3 scoring candidates back for a second interview and then the top 2 back for a third interview, for example. That's if the person who's successful, their scorecard we put forms part of their HR file. Because if they, for example, can't do something, we can always refer back to the interview process to say, right, well, you said you could do that, so were you lying then or you're lying now? Were you lying to get the job or you're lying now? You know, your customer service, you said you've not had training on it, but in the interview process, you said that was a very competent part of your skill set. So what happened? Were you lying then or you're lying now? So we use the interview questions to try and train and manage the people and develop them moving forward.
Right. Thank you. I think we'll probably stop on that and then move on to onboarding. So let's assume you found the right person, they adhere to your values, and they've been through the interview process and scored well. How do you effectively ramp a new joiner, so reduce the time from the job, their first day, to then being a fully functioning and productive member of the team?
Yeah, have a very, very structured first 90 days. So the first 90 days, you get one chance to make a first impression. So make sure the workstations are set up, the emails, access to your, your CRM system, the phone number, whatever it is. That's the first impression. The next thing is induction and training. So if you throw it all at somebody and say, right, there's the manual, go sort it out, go read it, you've lost it. And just as a side note, the worst way that you can try and train and develop your staff is lecturing them, which is quite ironic considering that's the entire way that the college and university system works. So the best way you can train and develop people, and the most effective way that people retain information, is actually role playing. Because the more senses that you bring into a learning, then it activates and reactivates different parts of your brain. So you actually retain more information. We only ever do a 50-50 learning day. So we'll never learn more than 50% in one day. You think about it, last time you did a cramming session for an exam, 3 days later, did you retain the information? Of course you didn't. But this isn't an exam, a once in a lifetime exam. We want this person to be with us forever and a day. So we'll only ever train for 3-4 hours a day. And then the other 3-4 hours a day, they're literally sitting with somebody, inputting the data, they're doing it themselves, possibly role playing, possibly in a training environment, but they're actually being kinesthetic, they're doing the do. So no more than 3 to 4 hours training on a daily basis. I don't believe in this generic customer service training if 3 out of your 5 staff are brilliant at it. It's boring, they're not engaged, it's not effective, it's not a good use of their time, it's not a good use of your time, and it's a very blanket way of training your staff. It's not a clever way of training your staff. So we identify each individual's learning and development needs, and then we specifically come up with a bespoke training plan for each individual. It's a bit like you and me playing football. I can't kick a ball with my right foot, you can't kick a ball with your left foot, but we do 2 hours kicking with your right and 2 hours kicking with your left. It's pointless. You do the specific parts, what you're not good at, not the parts you're good at, and then hide it behind it's a refresher. You don't need to be refreshed. It's inefficient. So we've got 90 days, and then we will just plan it out, and we'll have daily and weekly meetings with a person. Daily will be catch-ups, 5, 10, 15 minutes maximum. Weekly will be like mini one-to-ones, maybe half an hour. Monthly one-to-ones, probably an hour. And then we're just trying. We want that person to succeed. If that person doesn't succeed, the probation, which is the 90 days for us, the first question we must ask is why? Was it us or was it them? Could we have done something better? As you said earlier on, Raj, you learn more from your losses than you do your wins. So if somebody doesn't make it or they have to have the probation extended, we genuinely reflect and inflect and just say, right, what could we have done better to make for that person to have been to the standard we wanted them to be at 90 days? And if it's a case of nothing, it's their attitude or they didn't exhibit enough capability and competency or whatever it is and the motivation wasn't there, that's fine. But if it's a case of, look, well, we started a new branch, we acquired this one, we had this going on, COVID, whatever it is, then we say, great, so how can we make sure that that never happens again? And then we learn from it as much as what they do.
Right. A couple of questions on that. So you've talked about the structured, and I think the word structure is going to come up quite a lot in today's webinar. For those of you who know you, it will be unsurprising. But you've talked about the structure and an individual learning plan. So each person has it tailored to their own needs. how do you go about assessing that? So do you have some templates based on different roles? What's your approach to building those plans? Because you won't do each one from the ground up, would you?
Yeah, well, it's actually it's nice segue, by the way, Raj. It goes into the training section, so well done. Click, well done. So when everybody starts, so your job description should be given out pre-employment. So your job description is basically saying, "Hi guys, we've got a job. This is what you want you to do. Can you do it?" As soon as they get employed, that job description and everything on it gets transposed onto something we call a skills matrix. Sounds complicated, it's not. It's effectively the job description, but we will score them 1 to 4 of every single aspect of said job description. So 1 is underperforming, 2 is developing, 3 is performing, 4 is exceeding. And we will literally just go down top to bottom saying, right, where do we think that person is based on their performance? Right? If they're performing, they're doing exactly what we want them to do to the standard and the timeframes and everything, they're a 3. They're performing. If they're better than that, which is very, very, very rare, especially if you've just employed them, they're a 4. If they're getting the training and they're getting better, then it's a 2. They are developing. If they're getting the training, which they should be, because that's down to you, if they're getting the training and they're not getting better by their choice or otherwise, then they're not performing. So that's a 1. So it's a very, very clear way of marking them. When we sit down with them, we actually give this blank template, skills matrix, to the person and say, right, you go fill it in first. You tell me what you think you are. They bring that back to us. We go back and we research their performance, KPIs, everything, and then we'll have a look at every single aspect and we will score them where we think they are. Every time we disagree with them, so they say they're a 3, they're performing on customer service, for example, we think they're a 1 or a 2, we will bring up the facts and the evidence that will show why they're not a 3. And there's a really good phrase, and I'm going to swear, and I'm really sorry, but facts don't give a shit about your feelings. So if we've got the facts and they're upset, tough. It's just hard lines. So when you say you've got a perfect customer service, Raj, just for example, and I've got 3 complaints on your attitude or your communication styles, and I've actually physically listened to the phone call of you arguing with the landlord, you can't argue with that. And if you get angry or upset on you this or that, then that's just on you, that's not on us. But we present the facts and the evidence to why you're a 2, not a 3, or you're 1, not a 4, whatever. Because of that, what that identifies is loads of 1s and 2s. So we can immediately, and this is where we don't get the generic customer service. So if you're a 4 in customer service and I'm a 1, there's no point you sitting in on 2 hours worth of customer service. If you're very poor at chasing arrears and I'm very good, there's no point me sitting in on a 2-hour generic arrears chasing program or training program. So we have a look, we identify the 1s and the 2s, we come up with a bespoke training plan, and then on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, we can explain to that individual what are we going to do to get them and turn them from 1s and 2s to 3s and 4s. And we can put a plan in place and just monitor that moving on.
This all sounds hugely structured and very comprehensive, which is to be expected from you. But for those businesses that aren't at your scale, so you operate a business at scale with really great processes in place. How did you start? And I'm thinking about the people who are on the line in the audience today, where they may just be starting out, taking on their first employees, or slightly beyond that, maybe 1 or 2 branches. How did you do it then, and what could they take from your methods to implement today?
Do it. Literally, how I did it is I read, I researched, I spoke to people, I looked outside the industry. The majority of the stuff that we do is not property industry specific. So our systems I used to work for a foundry. So we used to melt metal, right? And they were an ISO approved company. And my father had an engineering company. So it was a precision engineering company, and they were ISO approved. And I learned all my systems and procedures from burning metal and making things out of metal. Right, nothing to do with property. I learned all my KPIs from a friend of mine who worked at Nissan. You know, so you look outside our industry. Don't look within it and think that the world ends if you look outside it. What else? Training development. A friend of mine had a vocational training company delivering NVQs. So I looked at a lot of stuff outside there. So I looked at a lot of external things out there, other industries to learn. But what I did do is I implemented it, And what worked, we kept, and what worked, we threw away. And most of it didn't work. Most of it didn't work. So probably 80% of what we have now, 20% of what I've tried, we keep. The other 80%, we tried it and it didn't. But you've got to put it into practice. And I think a lot of agents are quite precious about it, and they haven't got the time. I understand that, but you've got to make the time. You know, what a lot of things I do with my coaching clients is that I'll ask them what time they get up. They'll say 7. I'll say, great, get up at 6. What time do you go to bed? 10. Great, go to bed at 11. What did you do on Friday night? I had a few drinks with the lads. Right, stop in. Sunday? Oh, I had a lazy day. Get in, get up. So there's no excuse not to do it. And I know that sounds harsh, and I get that, and I'm sorry if I come across as a bit of a hard ass, but that's just the way it is. It just depends how much you want to put this into practice in your business. Do you want to keep going around the hamster wheel, having poor staff, not putting things in place, complaining, not having the right staff, not putting things in place, complaining? Or do you want to break that cycle? And unfortunately, it's going to take a little bit of hard work and putting your head above the parapet to do so.
It's really interesting that you started by saying that you've got this business and it's really well regarded and growing quickly, both organically and inorganically, but you don't work in the business. How long did it take you to transition away from being sort of executive within the business to, I guess, strategic leader above the business? And how did you do that?
So we've had the business 11 years. I think the first 2 years I wasn't working towards anything other than just building a business. So we can discount the 2 years, and then I had the light bulb moment of I want a systemized, well-run business that I'm not involved in. And then I would like to think it's taken me 5 to 6 years, 6 years if I'm honest, to, as well as growing. Like, you know, if we had 3 or 4 branches, I could have stopped years and years and years ago, but we're growing the business. So I still have to get in, well, I don't have to, I enjoy getting involved in the branch openings and the acquisitions, because I just simply enjoy that. Could my MD do it? Yeah, of course she could, but I really enjoy that. I've got a meeting tomorrow with a guy about an acquisition. I've got 2 next week about acquisitions. I'm not naive enough to think that people want to speak to the business owner rather than the MD if they want to sell their business. So yeah, I think from start to finish, it probably took 6 to 8 years to really systemize the business, make tons of mistakes, and therefore we had some sort of a semblance of a plan moving forward. I tell you what I did do very early. I learned that I've got to surround myself with great people. So there's a whole bus analogy where you've got to get the right bums in the right seats, heading in the right direction. Yeah. And a lot of people think that they're the bus driver driving the bus forward. You're not. You're the conductor allowing people on and off the bus. Your MD is the bus driver. Your MD is the one that should be, you know, telling people to sit down or get off the bus, or right, this is the direction we're going in. You're the conductor just saying, right, you're brilliant, you can get on. It's a silly analogy, but that's the way I explain it. You are not the person driving the business for. And by the way, this is all dependent on what you want. You know, if you want to be a one-man band with 1 branch, possibly 2 branches, and you really enjoy working, that's fine. But if you're integral to the business, then you've got a job, you're self-employed. You haven't got a business, you're self-employed. The true test of somebody who's got a business is go on holiday for 3 months, have nothing to do with your business, come back, and if it's run the same or better and nothing's gone wrong, you've got a systemized, well-run business with engaged staff. If you come back and all hell has broke loose, then that just reaffirms my accusation, if you like, that you've just got a job. And it's not a hard distinction to make. It's hard to hear, but in order to get where you want, you've got to know where you are.
Thank you. And before we move on to management performance, I'd just like to bring it back to training. So we've talked about the individual training plans and the skills matrix and the like, but who actually does the training for new staff members or existing staff members? Do you do that internally? Is it the line managers? Do you have specific people who are trained as trainers? Do you use external consultants? How do you manage that?
So it's our managers. So our managers will train their staff because they need to be engaged and bought in. And again, we have got systems and guidelines and training plans and development plans for every single role in the business. But we do appreciate and understand that there will be certain quirks from manager to manager. They might want things a little bit tighter in this aspect, maybe allow a little bit of lax in another aspect. So we allow the managers to take control of their own training of their own staff. And then my MD Adele will train the managers, and then it's sort of a very hierarchical, structured way.
And what about external training bodies, or I guess with Roper around the corner? So do you use any external training for your staff, particularly around legals and compliance?
All the time. So, even during lockdown, we had 2 trainers, external trainers. I'm always on webinars from in Australia and America, and probably only 50% are property related, because you learn so much from sales techniques, influence techniques, KPIs, training development, the latest leadership thought process. You learn it from outside the industry. So we're always training. I mean, I think I've done 3 degrees since I've started the business, just for shits and giggles, like nothing to do with the business. I'm just finishing my master's at the minute on strategic leadership. So that is literally just if I can learn one thing, one tiny little thing, and implement it in the business for its benefit, then sitting on that webinar for 3 hours at 4 o'clock in the morning has been worth it.
That is awesome. And I think you just hit the record for the number of swear words used in a single fixed flow webinar. So thank you.
Well, I'm from the north. We've just been on lockdown, so you can understand it.
Just as a reminder, we would love to hear from you. So if you've got any questions about anything you've heard, questions you'd like to pose about things you would have liked us to have talked about, or even comments about how you think this might apply to your business, please put them into the chat function on the right-hand side of the screen. And we've allowed plenty of time for what looks like a single audience question on the side, but is multiple. We will have time for more than one audience question. And moving on to management and performance. So we've hired the right person, they're onboarded and they're being trained. Now, how do you ensure that people perform at the optimum level? And I guess the other question is, what do you do if they don't?
Yeah, so it's setting achievable, realistic KPIs, having one-to-ones in a formal setting to be able to discuss those, the targets, and discuss the performance is absolutely imperative. Our meetings and how we structure our meetings are also very important. So it's constant communication, not over communicate. Although there's no such thing as over communicate, you can under communicate and people can not appreciate or understand what is expected. But if you over communicate, everybody understands. So we have morning huddles, which is 5-6 minutes long, weekly meetings.
Can you just explain how you structure your morning huddle, your weeklies, just as a general overview?
Yeah. So everybody gets 1 minute. That's it, no more. The manager tops and tails it with a minute. So they'll start with a minute, they'll finish it with a minute. And everybody in that branch gets 1 minute to say what they're doing today. Did they get what they wanted to achieve yesterday? And is there anything stopping them achieving what they want to today? And when you verbalize something, you're twice as likely more to do it. And basically, you don't look like a bit of a prat in front of your colleagues. Did you get that tenant moved in, Raj? No. Why? Oh, I was just too busy. You're going to look a bit of a donkey in front of all your colleagues. So verbalizing it, make sure you're more likely to do it. But it also allows the manager to know, because they've got their eye and they're looking at spinning loads of plates. We're pushing them for finances and hit the figures and the targets and the KPIs. They're managing the staff, they're prospecting, they're taking on new landlords, they're getting rid of landlords, they're dealing with complaints, maybe an ombudsman issues come in. So we want to try, and that's that point in the morning where everyone says what they're up to. Then on a weekly basis, because once a month, when the managers get their P&Ls and they tell everybody what we've made or not made and what we're going to do and what our targets are, we don't want to leave it till the end of that month before we have another chat with them to say, right, we had 10 move-ins, we're on 6, we've got 3 days to go, where we're going to get 4 move-ins. We don't want that. So why we have weekly meetings is to preempt it and say, right, we've got to get 10 move-ins, we need to get 2 or 3 a week. It's week 2, we're on 4, we're a little bit behind the curve. Who can be making the calls? Can we phone up, past viewings? Is there any more people? How many people want to see that house? Do 2 or 3 of them want to go see that house? And you can push it. So it's a bit like train hard, fight easy. So train hard the whole month. So at the very end of it, it's more realistic to hit your targets. So you're not like rushing the last 3-4 days of the month, doing the invoicing, doing all viewings and valuations and inventories, inspections and sales and negging. Make sure it's done. Breaking it down piecemeal across the month, not right at the very end.
And how do you get, say, a new manager in a position where they start to believe that so my expectation is you've got stretching targets, and if someone's new to the role, they may be a little bit daunting. How do you coach them through that, or how does Adele do it, I'm guessing, in your business, to get them into the mindset that it is achievable and that they can visualize themselves achieving or winning?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the honest answer is communication and coaching techniques. So there's a guy called John Whitmore talks about grow. There's a one called Cigar. There's loads of coaching techniques, but effectively we show them. So we might say, right, we want you to make 10 grand this month for this branch. And they might look at it and say, well, how the hell am I going to make that? Well, we'll show them previous P&Ls, what actions got what results, what actions didn't get a results. And we sit down, we explain with them that this is what we would do if we were in their shoes. So rather than just saying £10,000, see you later, it's a case of, right, that might look, it's how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. Well, if we sell 4 houses this month, we've got 6 completions, we've got 22 move-ins, we've got this much from commission, that much from inventories inspections, we need 5 solicitor referrals, 4 mortgage referrals, and you just break it all down, and that's how you get your £10,000. It's a little bit like when somebody goes to play football for the first time, and he says, right, I want to play for, I was going to say Sunderland, but nobody wants to play for Sunderland. You know, it might be really unachievable, but how do you do it? You say, right, well, we'll get you past the under-10s, and then we'll get you seen by the local coach, and we'll get you on Sunderland under-15s, and you build it up, and you build up a plan. So you don't go from there to there, you go from there to 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 there, and you're just slowly building it up. And so long as you're there to give feedback and support and coach and nurture them, and you know, pick them up when they fail and pull them down when they get a bit too ahead of themselves, because they will, then that's what a good manager does.
Really interesting. And this is my view rather than anything else, but from places I've worked in and other businesses I've seen, I think that managers spend a lot of time helping their underperformers to become average or possibly even good, rather than helping their good performers to excel. So we're really interested to understand how you deal with people who are underperforming to get them, if they have the core competencies and the right values, and you believe they can get there, how do you help them to get from where they are to a position of success?
Well, ultimately, it's down to training. It's down to you as a coach to try and get the best out of them, but you have to see something in them. And it's not just that they're a nice person. It's got to be that they're actually performing or going in the right direction. Remember, we said our values are be better, be better. Mm-hmm. If you're not and you're stagnant, then we've got to put you on performance management. And performance management effectively is just more frequent one-to-ones, more in-depth and frequent one-to-ones, and looking at your performance against the skills matrix, looking at your performance against your targets, against the KPIs, and just making sure that the actions you're doing is getting the results we want as a company. If it's not, then we have to part ways. And there's nothing wrong with that. We don't hold a grudge. We're not upset with you if you don't achieve it. We might be a bit disappointed, but there's a saying, I'd rather have a hole in my business than an arsehole, and we'd rather part ways. The reason people, is that another swear word, Raj? Sorry.
You're making sure that no one's ever going to catch up with you, but please carry on.
Just speak really fast and everyone missed it. You know, we are technically different people every 7 to 10 years. Literally, biologically, our cells reproduce depending on where they are. So this is a reason why, you know, you might like scrambled eggs when you're 14, but when you're in your mid-20s, you hate eggs, right? So people change, relationships change. They might have started and have such a brilliant way that, you know, they wanted to work for you and had a great manner and the values, and then something's gone on in their personal life and you're just not top of their priority list. That is totally fine, so long as they part ways in a amicable way and they do it the right way. If they change their mind, we'll always welcome them back. We've got 3 staff that have left us 3 times and come back 3 times because they did it the right way. They served us notice. They evicted us, they served us notice, they left properly, correctly, and they came back. And it was a case of, look, we're sorry, John, can we come back? The grass isn't always greener. Now, one of them has left again, and I have told her, you're not coming back, in a jokey way. And if you do, we want all your leaving presents back. So it's because we think she's just leaving for the leaving presents. So relationships change, just as long as they're leaving the right way, that's fine. But don't be emotional about it, be logical. And this is where the scorecards, the KPIs, the skills matrix, individual learning plans come in. So one of the biggest things why people don't want to get rid of people or don't want to performance manage them or sack them, whatever it is because, well, one, better the devil you know, it never is. And the second thing is they're going through a difficult patch. You know, I know people who've employed people and they said their difficult patch lasts 6 years. A difficult patch is a couple of weeks to me. So after a couple of weeks, you haven't seen relevant improvements. After you've done everything you possibly can, then you need to start having a look at, is this person right for the business, and is this business right for that person?
And so parting company is one of the hardest things, particularly for new managers or people who haven't previously said that this just isn't going to get to where it needs to be. What actionable tips, and again, this is not legal advice, and I know there are employment law considerations around all of this, but what actionable tips do you have for the, say, first-time manager or someone who's facing up to that difficult conversation to prepare them? What could you share?
The first thing is don't be emotional about it. We're not asking you to be a robot or a Vulcan, but just don't lead with emotion. Have empathy, have sympathy, but not leading with emotion is crucial. Lead with facts and be very logical about it and explain to them the reasons why. Now, if you come up with and butt heads with emotion on emotion, it'll never work. You'll never explain it. Even when you're logical and someone shows that emotion that they're getting rid of and you're parting ways, they still might not understand at that time. But the amount of people who have come back later on after threatening us with legal, or I'm taking this further, or I'm just so upset I can't speak, and said, do you know what, guys, you're right. Thank you for making that decision. It was absolutely the right one to make, because they've reflected on it. At the time, they don't feel that way, but when they reflect a day, 2 days, a week later, it's the right decision. So be very logical about it with a little bit of emotion. Be very factual about it. Have all your facts and your evidence, and bounce it off other people. If you're a manager but you've got a boss, bounce it off the boss. If you know other managers in the industry, bounce it off them. But being a manager or being a boss can be quite lonely, and you do need to talk to people. I'm lucky that I've got an MD and now an area manager who bounce things off me, and vice versa. And I've got people in the industry I might want to bounce it off. And I've got a business partner as well. So it's very important that if you're struggling, or I know mental health's a big topic at the moment, and quite rightly so. Don't bottle it up. You need to speak about it, but just have facts and evidence. Make sure it's in line with your values as well. So if your values are being better and you've tried to make them better, you've looked at the training plan, you've looked at the skills matrix, you've done everything you can, you've sat down with them, your manager sat down with them, you're looking at everything, and after that you still can't make it work, then you can look yourself in the mirror and say, do you know what, guys, I did everything I could. We're just going to have to part ways. That makes it a lot better. If you can honestly look at yourself in the mirror, hand on your heart, and say, I did everything I could. It wasn't me. It was down to them. You're fine.
Amazing. Thank you. And we have a lot of audience questions, and please put more in. We've allowed plenty of time on today's webinar. After feedback, so the incremental improvements, so feedback from previous webinars where we didn't allow sufficient time, so we have allowed sufficient time now to go through the questions. Hopefully we'll get through them all. The first is, do you do anything to incentivize your staff to hit their targets over and above their normal way? So how do you drive over performance, and how do you appropriately reward and retain your rock stars?
So if you look at what motivates people, I love this. I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to this sort of stuff. If you look at what motivates people, and you look at the motivational and behavioural scientists and theorists, you'll have heard of Maslow hierarchy of needs. It's a chap called Alderfer, Hertzberg, McClelland, Mayo, all these guys. They talk about a couple of things. Maslow called it self-actualization, achievement, attainment, ambition. Effectively, that's what motivates people. That's what truly motivates people. Achievement, attainment, ambition is moving forwards towards individual and company goals. Money never motivates people. It's actually, it's what's called an enabler. So it gives you the things you want, such as holidays. Guess what? Spend time with your family. Cars, guess what? Make you feel nice because it's an experience. Nice homes for you and your family, right? It's experiences you want. So when we talk about how do we motivate staff, is we have a clear plan of where they are now, we find out where they want to get to, and then we map it out over a period of time. And by the way, going straight up isn't the only way to motivate people. You're a small business, you're the boss, you've got 3 or 4 staff, and you say, well, I can't keep promoting them. That's fine. A goal might not necessarily be a promotion going up. A goal might be just be the best portfolio manager or sales neg or lettings neg in the company. So somebody said to me, like months and months and months ago, if you had to work at McDonald's, would you be as motivated and driven? I went, yeah, because I'll be the best employee McDonald's has ever had. I would. I'd be the best burger flipper in the entire company, because that's what motivates me, being the best at what I can be. So when you're talking about your staff, what motivates them is progressing them forwards towards their individual and organizational goals, and it doesn't necessarily mean a promotion. So that's important. That's the first thing, is have an identifiable plan of how they're going to get better in their role. And if promotion forms part of that, then brilliant. If it doesn't, don't worry about it. Just make them the best lettings negotiator, portfolio manager, valuer, improve their conversion from 40% to 55%, go through the process. That's all it takes. The second thing is they've got a wage. So their wage is to hit certain targets, right? If they don't hit their wage, if they don't hit their targets, then what we're employing them for. The next thing above and beyond that is the bonus. So say, for example, they've got to bring in a certain amount of money before they hit their target. That's what the wage is for. Above and beyond, then we have tiered targets, and the finances are important. Because I do appreciate, while finances don't motivate people on their own, they are needed to pay the bills. They are needed to put your kids through, college or uni or whatever it is. So our targets are very much a tiered process. You hit that, you'll get £100, 200 quid, 300 quid, 400 quid, and it's uncapped. But what happens if they hit tier 4 and they're making £400? I can guarantee they're making me and the company a damn sight more than that. I want them to succeed, because if they hit 400 quid, they're making me 5,000 quid or whatever that figure is. So the more they succeed, the more I succeed. And they are achievable. We did have a couple of years ago, some girl said they're not achievable. And we said, well, you've hit them for the last 7 months. So they are achievable. Just because you don't hit it every month doesn't mean they're achievable. You hit it once, it's achievable. We just expect you to put a certain amount of effort and hard work into it that will allow you to hit those targets.
Like you, I read quite extensively, not just in sector or whether property or tech or more widely. And typically it is the outperformers who are the most profitable people to have on the team. And so setting up compensation with accelerators, as you've described, is a really good way of sharing the reward for the efforts they put in. I know that you do whole weekends on systems, processes and structure. So I'm not asking for all of that now, but one of the questions that's come in is, at the beginning you mentioned having the right systems and you briefly mentioned a CRM. Without going into all the detail that you would on one of your usual courses, I guess, because of time, but what other systems do you view as part of the systemization of a business?
So the word system is a very generic one. It just means a set of rules to follow. So we could literally spend a full week on what set of rules do we have. Basically, we have a set of rules for everything, for ordering the coffee and the stationery, to how to open up, to how to onboard a landlord, onboard a tenant, move a tenant in. And effectively, everything in your business needs a process. It doesn't have to be in depth. I mean, our first one was 20 pages long. It's now 330, 340 pages. It's online with a bespoke training, learning and management system. It's, you've got to pass certain tests internally before you get allowed on to the next process. But effectively look at every aspect of your business and say, right, how can I make it more efficient? How can I be more efficient? How can I be better at that particular role? You might need software, you might not need software. I know there's a big resurgence on a lot of CRMs out there at the moment, but you can't beat a person. Without a person, software is nothing. So make sure you've trained your staff up to be able to use the software. Are they using it effectively? I'm yet, myself included, yet to come across an agent who is maximizing the return on their CRM system. I mean, every day we find stuff that our CRM system does that we didn't think it did, or update or whatever. So just make sure you're maximizing every bit of kit and software. Fixflow, brilliant bit of kit. Maximize it absolutely to the fullest potential. Because if you're not, and you complain about this isn't happening or that isn't happening, you've got an easy fix. So focus on your staff. It's unequivocally, they are the most important part of your business. Nothing can run without your staff. So make sure you got your training and development in place, your management systems, your processes, and just sort of build up from there. But having a set of rules for every operation in your business, that's what I would call systemization.
Brilliant. And sort of turning it back to the software. So we've been through, I think, possibly even peak prop tech for this wave. lots of prop tech solutions. What I've seen work well with client businesses is if they have an internal champion or expert on a system. So each system that is used has, and for a business of your size, you may have a few on your core CRM, because the systems themselves are upgrading. So we upgrade every couple of weeks. We do free webinars, but typically you'll have to say, yes, I want to activate this feature. So I'd strongly encourage you, not just for fixed flow customers, but across all the solutions you use across your business, have an internal champion, make sure they're empowered and encouraged to stay up to date and to enable change that would help the business. You're paying for the software. Your software providers should be improving what they do iteratively and continuously, and make sure you get the benefits. I'm going to jump slightly now and possibly rephrase a question, which is around performance reviews. The upshot of it is that the term performance review, and I think this comes back to management and performance, can have a negative connotation. How do you start the process of talking to someone about a performance review, or as you call it, more intensive and regular one-to-ones, without it having a negative connotation, and then perhaps starting to look elsewhere rather than going through the process, which could bring them up to the appropriate standard?
So a performance review is, we call it performance management. That's when somebody who has consistently not been performing. If they've been performing in a one-to-one, then it's a very much a high five, pat on the back, slapping on the back type of conversation. If they're continually not performing, then it's very much driven by data. So if we've targeted them on achieving certain things in the business and they haven't, then we've got to have more regular conversations with them. And it's 80% training and 20% review. So the 20% would be, well, look, you've had 2 weeks. This is your second week on performance management. You're hitting this target. You're not hitting that one. You're not hitting that one. And then the other 80% would be talking around what they need to do in order to achieve those 2 actions that they weren't hitting the targets. So if somebody doesn't achieve something, if something doesn't happen, it's only ever a person issue or a process issue. That's the only 2 things. Either somebody didn't do it or the process was inadequate. Fine. If the process is inadequate, let's change it, let's alter it, let's upgrade it, whatever, let's rewrite it. If it's a person issue, it can only ever be another 2 things, and it's a skill or a will. Either somebody hasn't had the training to do a job, somebody hasn't got the motivation to do a job. If they haven't got the training, it's an easy one. Let's go through the training process. Hence why this performance management is 80% talking about what can we do training-wise, development-wise, to allow you the skills in order to hit those targets. By the way, we're taking it as read that the targets are achievable. So we're taking as read that other people have achieved them, current staff, previous staff. So we're not having to review the targets and make sure they're achievable. And if it's a skill, if it's a will issue and it's motivation, then we've got to have an uncomfortable conversation to say, you've had the training, you've hit them before, you're choosing not to now. People in the past have hit them, your colleagues are hitting them. You're clearly choosing not to hit them. Why? What's going on? Then if it's constant motivation, got absolutely no problem in parting ways with that person. None whatsoever. It's never personal.
And so we talked about the standards to which you hold people, and this is a question that came up from the audience. We talked about the objective standards, but there are also some qualitative things. So you talked about value. So you hire and retain people. So I presume if people don't meet your values on an ongoing basis, you'll be going down the sort of rectification or party companies way. How do you do that when you don't have the data on the values?
You do have the data.
Okay.
So when you think about it, your skills matrix is a lot to do with the actions, which is your capability and your competencies. But the top part of the skills matrix are your behaviours. So those are your attitudes. So you can string out 5, 6, 7 attitudes that you want a successful employee to have. Results focused, positive attitude, takes care of own development, all that sort of stuff. And remember the 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is underperforming, all that. So I can have examples of when you weren't results focused or you weren't results focused. You know, going the extra mile, something like that. You know, if a landlord phones up at 5 to 5 on a Friday, and you say, "Oh, can you phone back on Monday morning? I'm going home now." It's pretty obvious you're not a very results focused. Customer service driven. If I hear you talking, you say, "Do you know what? I finish at 5 o'clock. I'll come around doing that viewing at 5:20. I'd say you're very much customer focused. So you can determine, or you can use qualitative and quantitative analysis on people's behaviours, capability, and competency. And that I learned that from, believe it or not, my son's school report. You know, when they give 3 for effort and 4 for effort and all that sort of stuff, as well as the ABCD or whatever it was. So I learned it on that, and then looked at skills matrix and training matrix. So again, I look at my kids to how I run my business, and it works really well. So joking aside, those types of things. Again, if you've got to get rid of somebody, get rid's a horrible word, but you know what I mean. Performance manage somebody on their attitude. If I said to you, I think, I believe, I feel you haven't had a good month. I think your attitude stinks. I believe you didn't do this. I feel as though your attitude needs improving. You'll say, disagree, John, prove it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm screwed. But if I can show evidence of why I think you're a 1 or a 2, not a 3 or a 4, you can't argue with that. The good thing about this is, and I hope none of my staff are on this, is that after a couple of months of doing the skills matrix, which you do every month for about 3 or 4 months, once they're out of probation, is that they'll get lots of wins, like 1s and 2s will jump to 3s, possibly some will jump to 4, maybe a 3 to a 4, 2 to a 3. But after that, there'll always be a couple of sticking points. There'll always be a couple of 1s and 2s, and you can really drill down, you can really focus in. Now, if you've got somebody, to start off with, they might push back and say, I disagree, I disagree, I disagree. After a couple of months of you producing the evidence, producing the facts, not batting them down, but being right and proving it. If you say they're a 2 or a 3, they just agree with you automatically, because they know you've evidenced the fact that you've got facts and evidence to back up your theory points of view. Now they'll just take it as read and go, yeah, I agree. Raj, I agree. Yeah, I can do better at this. I can do better. So the first, it's like anything, butt heads the first couple of months. After that, you can mark them whatever within reason, and they would go along with it. The majority of people, the majority.
And do you find over time their self-assessments get closer to your assessments, not you, but the business's assessment?
No, you're right. You're right, 100%, because you're basing yours on facts and evidence. So once you've got a baseline of what facts and evidence constitute a 1 or a 2, a 3 or a 4, you can see the penny dropping. They understand now the rules of the game. They understand how you're qualitative about quantitative information.
I'm conscious that we've got about 8 minutes left and quite a lot of questions still there. So I'm going to tick off one quite quickly, actually. And so this is, how do you identify, close and finance acquisitions? JP very kindly did an hour-long webinar specifically on this topic with us a few weeks ago. So this was about how do you grow your business through M&A, what an effective M&A strategy. So for whoever asked that, if you could go to our website, all of the webinars we've previously done in the series are available under the resources section, and you'll be able to watch that on demand. The next question is, have you ever used a provider to implement your policies and procedures?
No, because we write them all ourselves.
Okay.
So we do.
Have you ever implemented? So I think, I mean, from a consultant perspective, how have you got involved in other people's businesses in terms of their policies?
Sorry, yeah, I get you. So I've got a coaching business as well where I help people go through this. So I've written a couple of books on systemizing your business and how to put structure in your business. One's called the Agency Roadmap, and we talk about the 9 parts of your business. It's not 10 seconds, basically. I don't want to be a sales pitch. But all available good bookstores. And we just joking. We've just put in structure into your business from all different aspects, from the values that I spoke about, leadership, communication styles, prospecting, marketing, training development. So yeah, I just help other agents do this.
Amazing. And if people want to find you, that your contact details will be on an email that will come out after this.
Very,
I appreciate
yeah.
That you're easy to find. That is good. There are questions still coming in. So what kind of training do you think is the most effective? External sales training, a buddy system, and how do you choose who to pair together? Because a lot of it comes down to personalities, not just this person's a great performer. They may be a great performer, but they may not be the right model for the person you're bringing into the business. So how do you approach that?
So it totally depends on your skill set as a business owner and your time and resources. So if your skill set is you're not a very good coach or manager, I'm not a very good manager of people. I'm a much better leader, where my MD is a very good coach of people, and she's got a lot of time and she'll sit down with people, etc., etc. So use your different skill sets for different things, and then recruit in or hire in people who can marry and complement your skill set. We have a buddy training system in there, so we have people, and we don't pick best friends. We pick people who you would think would be a little bit abrasive with each other, because we want them to actually learn. Isn't part of being a good person learning to get on with people?
Yeah.
So why would you buddy people up who are best friends and who probably say, I tell you what, you say I've done this bit and I'll say you've done that bit. You almost want people to be a little bit abrasive so they'll learn how to get on. And sure enough, it's gonna lead to a more harmonious working relationship. Of course, you run the risk of fights in the middle of the office, but it hasn't happened to us, touch wood, so far.
Yes. Yeah. What is your book called? So it's the Agency Roadmap, and it's available on Amazon, I'm guessing.
It's actually not. The Stress to Success, which is the systemization one, that's on Amazon. The Agency Roadmap, I run. I'm okay to talk about my Facebook group.
Yep.
Agency Growth Strategies on Facebook. If you get in there, the link's all over.
Amazing. Thank you. And with that, I think we're running out of time. So today we've been through how you recruit the right people and how you go through a recruitment process, how you onboard them for success, how you train them and assess them on a continuous basis and get marginal gains across the piece, what to do if somebody is underperforming and how you might handle that difficult conversation, and more importantly, how you can get them back to being a performer, and how you can part ways in a non-emotional, non-confrontational and hopefully amicable way, which in some cases leads to people rejoining your business multiple times with lots of leaving presents. Thank you all so much for all of your questions. I'm hugely grateful for your attendance, and we'd love to get your feedback. So this is one of the marginal gain things. Both John and I are obsessed about all feedback, particularly not just the good, but also the bad. So if there are things that we can improve on through this series, or things that we didn't really cover off sufficiently for your liking, please put it in. We are desperately keen to continuously improve. Thank you again, John, for all of your time and sharing your insights. If you have any feedback on the webinar series, as well as the feedback form, please email us at research@fixlay.com. We're really looking at the webinars we're going to cover over the winter period. And so if there are topics that are of interest to you, please let us know. We've got a couple of really interesting webinars coming up. One is with, I believe, one of your fellow board directors at Property Mart. So we've got Nathan Emerson talking about the deconstruction of a business and how you can really understand what drives agency businesses. And we also have Peter Knight talking about Agency 4.0. And I know he's got a conference coming up on it. So it's basically where Peter and the thought leaders he speaks with think that the world is going, and how this isn't the new normal, it's the bit between the normals. Once again, thank you all so much for being here, and have a wonderful day. Thank you, JP.